My name is Jessica Morgan, and for most of my life, I believed my marriage was peaceful, not perfect, not exciting, but peaceful. And for a woman like me, who grew up in a small home with a tired mother and a quiet father, peace always felt like a blessing. But peace can hide things. Silence can hide even more. And sometimes, the person you love the most can hide the deepest truth right inside your own home. I remember the day everything changed as clearly as I remember the lines on my own hands. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was standing in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup when a strange thought passed through me. A thought I had ignored for 12 long years. The locked room. The one my husband Kevin never let me enter. The one he walked past every morning without looking at. The one he kept the key to, always in his pocket. Some women complain about loud husbands, messy husbands, husbands who forget birthdays. Mine remembered everything. Mine kept everything in order. Mine loved routines more than people. But the locked room, that was the one thing that never felt right. Even on our first week in the house, when I asked him, "What's inside this room?" he only smiled a soft, tired smile and said, "Just storage, Jessica. Old things. Nothing for you to worry about." And I believed him. I trusted him. I trusted him so much that I did not ask again. Not once. Not in 12 years. But that rainy Thursday, as I listened to the soft tapping of the drops against the window, something inside me shifted. Not fear. Not anger. Just a quiet ache. A feeling that something inside that room was calling for me, asking me to look. I don't know why it happened that day. Maybe because Kevin had left early for work, and the house felt unusually still. Maybe because I had just turned 50, and my heart had grown heavier with unasked questions. Maybe because silence becomes too loud when you're alone with it. I walked down the hallway slowly. Each step felt like I was disturbing old dust, old memories, old secrets I had been too gentle to touch. The door looked the same as always: dark wood, clean edges, nothing special. Yet somehow, it felt different that day, like it was waiting. I placed my hand on the cold doorknob, not turning it, just holding it, and I whispered to myself, "Why did I never ask again?" 12 years is a long time to avoid a question, and maybe that is why, when I heard the soft sound of keys jingling behind me, my heart tightened. I turned. Kevin was standing at the end of the hallway. His coat was wet from the rain. His eyes were tired, very tired. But what scared me was not the tiredness. It was the fear, not my fear, his. He looked at me the way someone looks when they see a fragile glass about to fall and shatter. "Jessica," he said quietly, not angry, not loud, just afraid. "Please step away from the door." I didn't move. Something in me refused to. He walked slowly toward me, his wet shoes leaving small marks on the wooden floor. The hallway felt smaller with each step he took, like the house itself was holding its breath. When he reached me, he gently held my wrist and lowered my hand away from the doorknob. His fingers were cold, his voice even colder. "You don't want to open that room," he whispered. And for the first time in 12 years, I realized something. It wasn't a room he was protecting. It was himself. I looked up into his eyes. This man I had loved for more than half my life. This man who shared breakfast with me every morning, who fixed the garden fence every spring, who held my hand when my mother passed away. This man who never raised his voice. There was something inside him, a storm, a memory, a truth that he never let me see. I didn't ask him anything. I just waited. Waited for him to tell me why a simple wooden door could frighten him so deeply. But instead, he stepped back, ran a hand through his wet hair, and whispered the last thing I expected to hear. "Jessica, please, I can't lose you. Not over this." Lose me? Over what? A room full of old boxes? My chest tightened with quiet confusion. Confusion and hurt. He looked broken, not angry, not controlling, just broken. He left the house again after that, said he needed a little time. He didn't say why. He didn't take the key with him. For the first time in 12 years, the key to the locked room lay on the small wooden table near the door. A single silver key, quiet, still, waiting. I stood in the hallway long after he left. I listened to the rain. I watched the soft light hit the key. And there, in that quiet moment, something inside me changed forever. I realized that sometimes, the truth doesn't knock on your door. Sometimes it waits behind one. I should have walked away. I should have respected his silence. I should have told myself that trust means letting some secrets stay hidden. But I didn't, because the key was there, because my heart was tired of guessing, because the day felt like it was telling me, it's time. And so, with hands that trembled like old paper, I picked up the key, turned toward the locked room, and whispered to myself, whatever is inside, I need to know. What I found or what found me changed everything. And this is where the quiet story of my marriage stopped being peaceful and became something else entirely, something that still lives inside me. 12 years later, I did not open the locked room right away. I know that might surprise some people, but that morning, after Kevin left and the key sat there on the table, I could not move. My hands were still trembling, and my heart felt painfully tired, like it was carrying years of unspoken questions. So instead of rushing to the door, I walked back to the kitchen slowly. I stirred the soup again even though it didn't need stirring. When my hand shook, I pressed it softly against my apron. Sometimes when you have lived a quiet life for many years, even the smallest crack in the silence can feel too loud. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the rain falling outside. Every drop felt like a memory returning. You may wonder who I am, who Kevin is, how we ended up in that house with the locked room. Let me go back. I met Kevin Morgan when I was 22. Back then, he was the kind of man who spoke softly but carried a gentle confidence. We met at a small diner in Ohio. I was a waitress working late shifts, and he was the quiet man who always ordered coffee and apple pie. He would sit in the same booth every night. He never rushed. He listened when people spoke. One night he said, "You look tired. You should rest more." It was such a simple sentence, but it was the first time in a long time that someone cared enough to notice me. From that moment, we began talking more. He told me he worked as an electrical technician, fixing wiring in old buildings. He told me he liked gardening, old music, and quiet evenings. I told him I liked reading and baking. He said he liked my smile. Our love was slow, comfortable, like warm coffee on a winter morning. Nothing rushed, nothing dramatic. I thought that kind of love lasted forever. After 2 years, we got married in a small ceremony. No fancy decorations, no large crowd, just us, a few friends, and promises made in soft voices. We bought a little house in a quiet neighborhood, just big enough for two people and simple dreams. I imagined that house would hold warm memories, and it did at first. After our first year in the house, Kevin locked one of the bedrooms. It was a small room at the end of the hallway, the one with the window facing the backyard. I remember asking casually, "What's in there?" And he answered with a calm smile, "Just old things. Nothing important." I trusted him. I had no reason not to. But the way he pulled the key from the lock, the way he slipped it into his pocket so quickly, something about it felt strange, not frightening, just unusual. Still, I let it go. Life has a way of teaching you to ignore small things when everything else feels peaceful. 12 years of quiet life given, and I lived a simple, predictable life. He worked long hours. I stayed home, cared for the house, and baked pies to sell at local fairs. Every morning he would kiss my forehead and say, "Take care of yourself, Jessica." Every night he would come home, eat dinner quietly, and read the newspaper. And every day, he would pass the locked room, never looking at it, never stopping, just passing by, like it was something he had forgotten, or something he wanted to forget. We never had children, not by choice, but by circumstance. After years of trying, the doctor told me it would be difficult. I cried that night. Kevin held me close, whispering, "It's okay. I have everything I need." But sometimes I would see him watching the neighborhood kids with a soft sadness. He never said anything, but I felt the quiet ache he carried. Maybe that ache had something to do with the locked room. Maybe not. I didn't know then. Life drifted on. Our days blended together. Birthdays, anniversaries, small celebrations with just the two of us. Our marriage felt steady, like a calm river. But calm rivers can hide deep waters. Looking back now, I think the first sign appeared 8 years into our marriage. It was late evening. Kevin was sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper. I walked down the hallway to put away some laundry, and as I passed the locked door, I noticed something unusual. A faint smell, soft, not bad, just different, like old paper mixed with something sweet. It only lasted a moment, but when I mentioned it to Kevin later, just casually, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. He hid it quickly, but I knew what I saw. He said, "It's nothing. Probably old wood." His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking very slightly when he turned the page of his newspaper. It was the first time I felt something wasn't right, but I didn't press him. I didn't want to break whatever fragile peace we had, so I stayed quiet, and silence became our third partner in marriage. Sitting at the kitchen table on that rainy Thursday, I stared at the key again. It felt heavier than any object I had ever held, even from across the room. I wondered why Kevin left it behind. He never forgot it. Not once in 12 years. Was it a mistake? Or did he want me to open the room? The rain kept falling. The soup grew cold. My thoughts gathered like clouds before a storm. I closed my eyes and whispered his name. Kevin. Where was he at that moment? Why had he looked at me with so much fear? I thought about calling him, but something inside me said no, not yet. Instead, I walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, the framed pictures of us smiling. Our life looked so normal. Two people who loved quietly. Two people who shared everything, except one room. I walked into the living room. Kevin's reading chair still had the soft imprint of his body. His glasses lay on the side table, next to the book he always read before bed. I touched the book gently. It was an old novel he had read a dozen times. He said it made him feel calm. I looked around the room and tried to understand how a man who lived so gently could hold such a heavy secret. I remembered our walks in the garden, our quiet dinners, our movie nights where he always held my hand even after so many years. Kevin was not a cruel man, not careless, not distant. He was warm in his own quiet way. He made me feel safe, until that moment in the hallway, when I touched the locked door. His eyes that morning, the fear in them did not match the man I had known, and that scared me more than the room itself. After sitting in silence for a long time, I returned to the hallway. The key was still there. The rain had stopped. The house felt expectant, as if it knew a long, quiet story was about to be broken open. I picked up the key and held it tightly. It was cold in my hand, like something untouched for years. I whispered to myself, if I opened the door, my life might change, but I also knew this. If I didn't open it, I would never live in peace again. And so, with a slow, steady breath, I walked toward the locked room once more. My story, the one I thought I understood, was just beginning. I stood in front of the locked door again, not pushing it open, not turning the key, just breathing, slowly, carefully, like the air around me had become delicate. The hallway felt different that afternoon, a little colder, a little too quiet, like the house was watching me. The soft light from the window touched the wooden door gently, and I noticed something I had never seen in 12 years, small scratch marks near the doorknob, faint, barely visible, like someone had tried to open it once, long ago. My fingers brushed them gently, and a small shiver moved through me. Why would there be scratches? I whispered to myself, but the house did not answer. The key felt heavier in my hand, as if it knew the weight of the truth it guarded. I took one small step back, another. My heart was beating loudly, too loudly for a quiet house. I turned away from the door and walked back toward the living room. I wasn't ready. Knowing a truth is one thing, facing it is another. As I sat on the couch, the memories came slowly, like pages of a book turning by themselves. Little things, small strange moments that I had ignored. Times when Kevin seemed unsettled for no reason. Times when he would check that hallway at night, not touching the door, but looking at it from a distance. There were nights I woke up and found him standing by the bedroom window, staring outside, as if listening for something. He always said, just couldn't sleep. But now, every small moment began to feel connected to the locked room. It was the 3rd year of our marriage. A thunderstorm hit late at night. The wind was strong, shaking the windows. I woke up to the sound of something falling in the hallway. Kevin jumped out of bed so fast that the lamp almost toppled over. I followed him. He stood in the hallway holding a picture frame that had fallen from the wall. It leaned dangerously close to the locked door. He picked it up with shaking hands. His face was pale. I asked him, "Are you okay?" He nodded, too quickly, just startled, but his eyes kept glancing at the door, like he was afraid something might push it open from the inside. At the time, I thought it was just the storm. People get jumpy. But now, remembering that moment, I knew it was something deeper. 6 years into our marriage, I had gone shopping early in the morning. When I came home, Kevin was sitting at the dining table, his head in his hands. He didn't hear me enter. I walked closer and asked, "Is everything okay?" He looked up sharply. His eyes were red, like he had been crying silently for a long time. He forced a smile. "Just tired, Jessica. Long week at work. But I saw the key on the table, just like today." He never left it there. Never. When I reached to pick it up, he grabbed it so quickly that I flinched. His hand shook as he whispered, "Don't touch that." It wasn't anger. It was fear. Deep, heavy fear. I didn't ask him anything. Not then. I made him tea, sat beside him, and tried to comfort him, even though I didn't understand what he was fighting inside himself. Now, those memories hurt in a different way, because they were signs, and I miss them all. It happened about a year ago. I was folding laundry in the hallway. The house was quiet. Kevin was outside fixing the fence. And for a moment, I heard something. A soft sound from behind the locked door. Not loud, not threatening. Just a gentle, almost delicate sound. Like someone taking a breath, or shifting slightly on a chair. I froze. The laundry slipped from my hands. I stood perfectly still, listening. But the sound didn't come again. When I told Kevin about it later, he grabbed my shoulders with both hands, his face pale, his voice trembling. "Jessica, you must have heard the wind." "Nothing else." I nodded slowly, but the look in his eyes said something different. It said, "Please don't ask me again." So I didn't. I wish I had. Sitting on the couch now, remembering all this, I felt something inside me soften. Not fear, not suspicion, but sadness. Sadness for the man I married, for the secret he carried, for the weight he never shared. I realized then that this secret had shaped our entire marriage, not out of cruelty, but out of pain. But what kind of pain? I looked at the clock. It was almost afternoon. Kevin had still not come home. Part of me wanted to call him, to ask him directly, to tell him I wasn't angry, just scared. But another part of me, the quieter, older part, knew he wouldn't tell me. Not yet. Some truths don't come through conversation. Some truths wait behind doors. A knock on the door just as I stood up to walk toward the hallway again. I heard a soft knock at the front door. When I opened it, I saw our neighbor, Carolyn Thompson, standing there with her small umbrella. Carolyn was in her late 60s, a sweet woman with a gentle voice. She often brought over cookies during holidays. She looked at my face and frowned softly. "Jessica, dear, are you all right?" I forced a weak smile. "Just a long morning." She hesitated. Then she asked something unexpected. "Is Kevin okay?" My heart tightened. "Why do you ask?" "Well," Carolyn looked over her shoulder nervously. "I saw him earlier. He was standing outside in the rain without moving. He looked troubled." Troubled. Yes, that was the right word. "Did he come back home after that?" she asked. I shook my head. She touched my arm gently. "If you need anything, you call me." "Anything at all." I nodded and thanked her, and after she left, I closed the door slowly. Kevin was troubled enough to stand in the rain alone, and now he had disappeared. Something was breaking. Something had been breaking for years. I took one more walk around the house. The living room, the kitchen, the small guest room, our bedroom. Everything felt familiar. And yet, unfamiliar at the same time. There's a strange feeling that happens when you know your life is about to change. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's a quiet awareness. Like your heart is whispering, "Pay attention." I walked back to the hallway, stood in front of the locked room again. The key in my hand felt warm now from my touch. I put the key into the lock, slowly, softly, but I didn't turn it. Not yet. Instead, I closed my eyes, and I remembered something. 10 years into our marriage, I found a photograph tucked inside one of Kevin's old jackets. It was old, worn, bent at the edges. A picture of a young woman in her 20s. She had soft brown hair and a gentle smile. She was sitting under a tree, holding something in her hands. It looked like a small baby blanket. There was writing on the back, "For you forever." I didn't recognize the woman. I didn't recognize the handwriting. When I asked Kevin about it, he froze for a moment. Just a moment. But I saw the panic pass through him like a shadow. He took the photograph gently and said, "Her name was Emily. She was a friend. She passed away a long time ago." I asked if he wanted to talk about her. He shook his head. His voice was soft. "Some memories are too heavy to carry out loud." I didn't push him. The next day, the photograph was gone. I never saw it again. Until now, I hadn't thought of her name in years. But standing in front of the locked room with the key in my hand, I whispered her name to the silence. "Emily, the house felt colder. Just as I opened my eyes, the phone rang. I walked to the kitchen slowly and picked it up. Hello? A moment of silence. Then Kevin's voice, soft, shaken. Jessica, are you home? My knees almost gave out in relief. Yes. Where are you? Are you okay? Another long silence. Then, please, don't open the room. My breath caught. Kevin, Jessica, listen to me. His voice cracked. I'm coming home. Don't open it. Not yet. Tell me why. I whispered. Tell me what's inside. A soft sound came from him. A breath. A broken breath. I will tell you everything. But I need you to wait for me. Kevin, please. His voice trembled. Just give me a little more time. And the call ended. I stood there holding the phone long after the line went dead. I wanted to wait. I truly did. But something inside me, something quiet, old, and honest whispered, he has had 12 years. I walked back to the hallway slowly. My hand did not shake this time. I turned the key. The lock clicked softly, like a sigh from the past. The door opened only a few inches. A faint smell came out, old paper, and something gentle, almost warm. I pushed the door open fully. The room was dark at first, but as the light from the hallway spilled in, I saw it, and my breath stopped. Because what I saw inside that room was nothing like what I had imagined. Nothing frightening, nothing dangerous. It was something far more painful. Something that pulled me to my knees. Something that had lived in the silence of our marriage for over a decade. Something Kevin hid not out of cruelty, but out of heartbreak. And as my eyes took in the room, I realized this secret was not meant to hurt me. It was meant to protect something he loved and lost. And the truth was only just beginning to unfold. When the soft light from the hallway spilled into the room, I took one slow breath and stepped inside. The air was still, old, like it had been untouched for years, but it wasn't cold the way I expected. It felt warm, almost gentle, like a memory someone had kept safe. For a moment, my eyes struggled to adjust. Then the shapes in the room slowly came into focus. And that's when I saw it. A small wooden crib, placed in the center of the room, perfectly clean, perfectly preserved, as if someone had taken care of it every single day. My heart stopped. Beside the crib was a rocking chair, old but polished. A folded baby blanket lay draped over it, soft yellow with tiny blue stars, the kind of blanket a mother would make with her own hands. And next to the crib, a small bookshelf, filled with children's books, all lined up neatly, not dusty, not abandoned, loved. My hand covered my mouth as tears rose in my eyes. This wasn't a storage room. This wasn't a forgotten place. This was a nursery. A nursery prepared with care, with hope, with love. A nursery for a baby who never came. My knees grew weak. I walked toward the crib slowly, my fingers trembling as I touched the wooden frame. It was smooth, clean, recently wiped, like someone had been in here often, maybe even yesterday. I felt a sudden, overwhelming ache in my chest. Oh, Kevin. The words barely left my lips. This room, this secret was not a lie. It was grief. Grief he hid from me. Grief he lived with alone. I stepped closer to the rocking chair and gently lifted the blanket. It smelled faintly of lavender, a smell I knew from years ago. My mother used to wash baby clothes in lavender. My vision blurred as more tears fell. A nursery. A perfect, untouched nursery. But why? We never had a child. We tried, and we cried, and we tried again. Until the doctor told us the truth neither of us wanted to hear. So why? Why would he create this room? Unless it wasn't for us. Unless it belonged to a part of Kevin's life he never shared. My breathing became uneven as my eyes noticed something else. On the small table beside the rocking chair was a framed photograph. I picked it up slowly. It was the same woman I had seen years ago. The woman from the picture I found tucked in Kevin's jacket. The woman holding a baby blanket. Emily. Her soft smile. Her gentle eyes. But this time, she wasn't alone in the photo. She was holding a baby. A tiny baby wrapped in a white blanket. The breath left my lungs. My hands shook so badly the photograph almost slipped. My legs gave out, and I sat slowly on the edge of the rocking chair. A baby, Emily, Kevin, a nursery. Pieces were falling together painfully, one by one. I whispered to the silent room. He had a child. My voice cracked. My heart cracked with it. A child he lost, long before he met me. Or maybe, before he married me. I closed my eyes as tears streamed down my face. Not because he hid it. Not because he kept a secret. but because I finally understood the weight he carried every day, every year, every quiet moment in this house. And I had never seen it. I had never felt it. I had never been allowed to share that grief with him. This nursery, this locked room, was the place where he kept his heartbreak, where he kept her memory, where he kept the baby he once loved. I sat there with the blanket in my lap and cried softly, letting the truth settle into my heart. After a long moment, I wiped my tears and looked around again. There was a small dresser against the wall, white, delicate, with tiny painted butterflies. My hands hesitated before reaching for it. Part of me felt like I had already crossed too many lines. Part of me felt I needed to understand everything. I pulled the top drawer open gently. Inside were baby clothes, tiny onesies, little socks, a soft knitted hat that looked new. I touched the fabric carefully, like touching something holy. Then I saw a small envelope beneath the clothes, yellowed, old, with Kevin's handwriting on it. The envelope had one word, "Forgive me." My breath caught. I picked it up with trembling fingers and opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, neatly folded. The paper was worn, like it had been opened many times. My hands shook as I read the first line, "Dear Emily, I'm so sorry." My heart stopped. This wasn't written for me. It was written for her, for the woman in the picture, for the mother of the baby. I kept reading, tears dripping onto the paper. I should have protected you. I should have been there sooner. I should have held our son longer. My eyes blurred. I don't know how to live with the guilt. Every day feels like I am drowning. Every night I hear him crying in my dreams. I don't know how to forgive myself. A sob escaped my throat. I will keep the nursery ready, even if no one ever sees it. It will be the only way I can keep him close. And you, I will love you forever. By the time I reached the end, I was shaking. This wasn't a secret born of betrayal. It was a secret born of pain. Kevin lost a child. Kevin lost a woman he loved deeply. Kevin lost a life he thought he would have. And when he married me, when we tried to build our own family, every failure, every hope, every heartbreak must have reopened his old wounds. Suddenly, I understood everything. His fear when I mentioned sounds, his shaking hands, his restless nights, the way he watched children, the sadness in his silence. He wasn't hiding the room from me out of mistrust. He was hiding his grief because he didn't want to bring that sorrow into our marriage. He didn't want me to carry a pain that wasn't mine, but he had been carrying it alone for far too long. I placed the letter back into the drawer and closed it softly. Then I walked toward the crib again. I placed my hand on the small mattress. I whispered, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't know you existed." My tears fell onto the wooden bars. "I would have loved you too." The words came out in a whisper, soft and broken. Footsteps down the hallway. Suddenly I heard something, a soft sound, footsteps, slow, heavy, coming closer down the hallway. I stood up, wiping my tears quickly. The door to the room was still open, and then Kevin appeared in the doorway. He froze, his eyes widened, his breath caught. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, two people separated by 12 years of silence, looking at each other through a doorway filled with memories. His voice broke first. "Jessica." Just my name, but it carried every emotion he had kept inside. He stepped into the room slowly. His eyes moved across the crib, the rocking chair, the blanket in my hands, the dresser, the photograph of Emily. He swallowed hard. His shoulders shook once. Then he whispered, "I asked you not to open it." His voice wasn't angry. It was broken. I stepped toward him carefully, softly. "Kevin, why didn't you tell me?" He looked at the crib again, then back at me. "Because you're the only good thing I have left." My heart cracked at those words. I didn't want you to see the part of my life where I failed. Tears filled his eyes, slowly, painfully. And I didn't want to destroy the peace we built. I shook my head gently. "You didn't fail me. I failed them, Jessica." His voice trembled. "I wasn't there when Emily needed me. I wasn't there when our baby came too early. I wasn't there when his sentence broke into pieces." I stepped closer and took his hand. He didn't pull away. He let me hold him. For the first time in years, he let me see him. We sat down on the floor beside the crib. He took a long breath, a heavy one, as if pulling out a memory he had buried deeply. "Her name was Emily Reed," he began softly. I nodded. "I know." He looked surprised for a moment, then sad. "We were young, barely 20. We planned a small life, nothing big, just a family." He paused. She got pregnant. We were so happy. I listened quietly, holding his trembling fingers. One afternoon, I was at work. She called me, said she didn't feel right. His voice softened. I told her I'd come right away. A tear slipped down his cheek, but I was too late. Silence filled the room. Emily died. He whispered the words as if they cut his tongue. And the baby died with her. My breath caught. I squeezed his hand gently. He continued. I built this nursery before he was born. Every evening after work, I painted the walls. I built the crib. I did everything with so much hope. His voice cracked. After losing them, I locked the room, but I couldn't let it go. So I kept it as it was. And when we moved here, I rebuilt it, exactly the same. I felt tears slipping down my cheeks again. He looked at me with tired eyes. I didn't tell you because I wanted our marriage to be free from my past. I didn't want my grief to hurt you. I took a slow breath and whispered, Kevin, your grief is part of who you are. He closed his eyes, and I hid that part from you. I gently touched his cheek. You don't have to hide anymore. For a moment, he looked at me like a man seeing the sunrise after years of darkness. Then he leaned forward and rested his head on my shoulder. He cried softly, quietly, like a man who had carried a mountain alone for too long. I held him, not as a wife demanding answers, not as a woman hurt by secrets, but as someone who finally understood his silent suffering. After a long time, he pulled back slightly. What do you want to do with the room? I asked gently. He looked around, at the crib, the blanket, the memories he had kept frozen for over a decade. He shook his head slowly. I don't know. I took his hand again. We don't have to decide today. He nodded. We can decide together, whenever you're ready. His eyes softened. For 12 years, I carried this alone, he whispered. And now, I'm not alone anymore. I smiled softly. No, you're not. We stood up slowly and walked toward the door. He looked around one last time, then whispered something so soft I almost didn't hear it. Good night, my little boy. My heart squeezed painfully but gently. He turned off the light. I closed the door. This time, we locked it together, not to hide grief but to honor it. When we stepped out of the nursery, the house felt different. Not lighter, not brighter, but quieter, in a new way. As if the silence inside these walls had been released into the open, no longer trapped behind a locked door. Kevin and I stood in the hallway for a long moment without speaking. His breathing was uneven. My heart was still trembling. He wiped his eyes gently. I did too. And then he whispered, "Thank you for not walking away." I shook my head softly. I never would. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully believe it yet. 12 years of carrying pain alone can make a person forget what shared comfort feels like. We walked to the living room together, slowly, as if we were learning how to move again. I sat on the couch. He sat beside me, close enough for our shoulders to touch, but not quite leaning in. He stared at his hands. I stared at the window. Rain had started again, soft rain, gentle rain, rain that sounded like healing. For a long while, neither of us said anything. And then he spoke. Softly, cautiously, like someone afraid his words might break the world around him. His voice trembled, not from fear of me, but from exhaustion. Exhaustion from holding everything in. I know, I whispered. I know, I said again, because truth often needs repeating. He nodded weakly. You must have thought I didn't trust you, or that I didn't love you enough to share my past. It wasn't like that, I said gently. I just didn't understand. He looked up at me, his eyes tired. I didn't want you to see me as someone broken. My heart ached at that. Kevin, I said softly, reaching for his hands. You're not broken. You're grieving. He didn't move for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. His fingers tightened around mine, small, hesitant, but desperate for comfort. I kept thinking, he whispered, that if I locked the room, maybe I could lock away the pain too. I squeezed his hand. But pain doesn't stay behind doors, does it? I said quietly. He shook his head. No, it doesn't. His voice cracked. It follows you. I leaned my head against his shoulder. He let out a slow breath, one that sounded like release, like the first breath he had taken in years. After a while, he spoke again. Every year on the same day, I went into the room. His birthday? I asked gently. He nodded. I would sit in the rocking chair and talk to him, as if he could hear me. I closed my eyes. Sometimes, he continued, I would read from those children's books. I memorized them, every page. Tears filled my eyes again. And sometimes, he whispered, I would clean the crib. It made me feel like I was still doing something for him. I listened, letting his words settle inside me like soft, heavy stones. He swallowed hard, and every time we talked about having a child, I thought maybe I could try again. But every time we failed, I felt like I was losing him all over again. I turned toward him. You didn't fail me, I whispered. His eyes softened, but his voice remained broken. I failed them, he said, and I failed you by hiding. You were protecting your heart, I whispered, and maybe mine too. He let out a long, shaky breath. I'm tired, Jessica, he said quietly. Tired of carrying this alone. I wrapped my hands around his. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. My voice was steady, calm. You have me. For the first time in years, Kevin leaned against me. Not physically at first, emotionally. He rested his forehead against my shoulder. His breath trembled. His tears warmed my skin. I stroked his hair gently, letting him cry. And in that moment, I realized something. When you love someone deeply, you don't only share the good moments. You share the heavy ones too. The painful ones. The ones they think are unworthy of being spoken aloud. Kevin had never learned how to share the heavy moments. But he was learning now. After he cried, he wiped his face and breathed out slowly. I'm sorry, he murmured. For what? I asked softly. For everything. For the silence. For the secrets. For shutting you out. I shook my head. Kevin, don't apologize for hurting. Pain doesn't make you guilty. He nodded, but I could see he still struggled to accept kindness. Some wounds are so old, they don't recognize comfort right away. We stayed on the couch for a long time. I made us tea. He held the warm cup with both hands, like it was grounding him. The rain outside turned into a steady rhythm, calming and slow. After a long silence, he asked, Do you hate me for hiding all this? I shook my head gently. No, I don't hate you. I just wish you didn't have to suffer alone. He seemed to absorb those words slowly, like he wasn't used to such understanding. Then he whispered, Thank you for not running away from the truth. I ran toward it, I said softly. He closed his eyes, letting relief settle in. Later that evening, he turned to me and asked, Would you come with me? Back to the room? I nodded. We walked down the hallway hand in hand. This time, he opened the door. The room no longer scared him, not with me beside him. He walked to the crib, placed his hand on it, and exhaled. I built this, he whispered, every piece. I sanded by hand. It's beautiful, I said. He looked at the tiny blanket in the rocking chair. He touched it gently. Emily made that, he said softly. She said she wanted the baby to have something warm from her. His voice cracked but didn't break. This time, he was holding himself together. We stood there for a long time, letting the past breathe. Finally, he said, It hurts less when you're here. I squeezed his arm. That's what love does, I whispered. It holds the pain gently. After a while, he turned to me, his expression soft but uncertain. What do you think we should do with the room? Eventually, I looked around slowly. The crib, the books, the blanket, the memories. We don't have to make a decision now, I said softly. He nodded, but whatever we decide, I continued, we'll decide together, not alone. A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't hide it. We closed the door, not locking it this time. The corridor felt peaceful as we walked down it side by side. He held my hand tightly, as if afraid I might slip away into the quiet. We ate a simple dinner. We didn't speak much, but the silence between us was different, now gentle, warm, shared. When we lay in bed, he turned toward me. There was no fear in his eyes now, only vulnerability and trust. Thank you, he whispered again. For what? I asked. For opening the door, he said, and for opening mine. I touched his cheek gently. You don't have to hide from me, Kevin. Not anymore. He nodded. I won't, he whispered. And for the first time in 12 years, I believed him. The next day, he woke before me. I found him sitting at the dining table, staring at a blank notebook. What are you doing? I asked. He looked up with tired but soft eyes. I'm writing, he said quietly. For him. He showed me the notebook cover. It said, Letters to my son. I felt tears form again, but this time they were warm. What will you write? I asked. He took a deep breath. Everything, he said. All the things I never said. All the love I never got to give out loud. I sat beside him. May I write a letter too? I asked. He looked surprised. You want to? I nodded. I never met him, but he's part of you. And now, he's part of us. Kevin covered his face with both hands and cried again quietly, gratefully. Then he whispered, I would like that, Jessica. I would like that very much. A week later, he asked if I wanted to go with him. To them, he said softly, to the place where they rest. I nodded. We drove together in silence, holding hands. When we reached the small cemetery, Kevin led me to a quiet corner under a large oak tree. There were two simple stones. One said, Emily Reed 1984-2004, a gentle soul. The other said, Baby boy Reed 2004, loved beyond measure. He knelt between them. I knelt beside him. He placed the letter he wrote on the baby's grave. I placed mine beside his. Then we sat there, letting the wind move around us. He whispered, I hope she knows I'm sorry. I whispered back, I think she knows you loved her. She can see it in everything you kept alive for them. He nodded slowly. Then he reached for my hand. You helped me do something I never thought I could do, he said softly. What's that? I asked. Let them rest, he whispered. After we returned home, we stood in the hallway again. The nursery door was closed, quiet, still, not a place of fear now, but a place of memory. He looked at the door, then at me. Someday, he said, I want to turn the room into something new, not to erase them, but to honor them. I nodded gently. We can make it something peaceful, I said, something filled with light. He smiled softly. With you here, we can do anything. I held his hand tightly. Our marriage was no longer built on silence. It was built on truth, on shared pain, on a deeper love than before, a love that had finally found its voice. In the weeks that followed, Kevin began to change, not in a dramatic way, in quiet ways. He woke up lighter. He spoke more softly, but with more honesty. He laughed sometimes. He touched my hand more often. One morning he said, I feel like I can breathe. I nodded. That's what happens when you stop hiding your grief, I said. He smiled weakly. And when you have someone who stays, I leaned into him. I'm not going anywhere. One evening, as we sat on the porch listening to crickets, Kevin said something I will never forget. You know, he whispered, I always thought love meant protecting someone from your pain. I turned to him gently. And now? I asked. He looked at me with soft eyes. Now I think love means letting someone share it. I smiled softly. That's what love is, I whispered. A shared burden, a shared life. He nodded and held my hand. And for the first time truly we were equals. In joy, in sorrow, in truth. The locked room was no longer a place of fear, secrets, or shadows. It was a place of memory, a place where healing began. And the man I loved, the quiet, gentle, broken man, was learning to live again. Not alone, not in silence, but with me, hand in hand, in the softest, slowest, most human way possible. It has been 3 months since the day I opened the locked room. 3 months since the truth stepped out of the shadows and finally breathed in the light. And life feels different now. Not perfect, not magically healed, but real, soft, honest, shared. Kevin wakes up a little lighter every day. He still has moments where he goes quiet, moments when he touches the nursery door gently, with a faraway look in his eyes. But now, he doesn't face those moments alone. Sometimes he takes my hand and whispers, come with me, and we stand there together, letting the past wash over us without drowning us. We talk more, about everything, about nothing, about feelings we hid for too long. Our home feels warmer, less like a museum of quiet routines, more like a place where two people live with open hearts. One soft Sunday morning, Kevin stood beside me with a paintbrush in his hand. Are you sure? I asked. He nodded. We're not erasing them, he said softly. We're giving the room a new purpose, something peaceful, something gentle. So we painted the walls a pale sky blue. We opened the window and let sunlight fill the room. We didn't take everything away. We kept a small shelf for the letters. We kept the photograph of the oak tree, the place where Emily and the baby rest. And we placed a potted plant in the corner. Kevin chose lavender. He said it reminded him of warmth, of love, of care. Now, when I walk past the room, I don't feel fear or sadness. I feel peace, a quiet whisper of healing. Something unexpected happened in all this. Our marriage grew stronger, not because we added anything new, but because we finally removed what stood between us. Silence. Kevin began telling me stories from his past. Small things, funny things, painful things, And I shared more of myself too. Things I never said out loud. Things I thought were too small or too heavy. We learned something simple but powerful. Love is not just sharing joy. Love is sharing the truth. All of it, even the parts that hurt. And once we began doing that, we realized how much we had missed in all those quiet years. Last week, we visited the graves again. The oak tree rustled in the wind. The sunlight fell gently through its branches. Kevin placed a small wooden toy on his son's stone, not because he expected anything, but because giving love even to someone gone still matters. I placed flowers beside Emily's name. White lilies, soft, peaceful. When we stood up to leave, Kevin took my hand and whispered something that warmed my heart. Thank you for making room in your heart for people you never met. I leaned my head on his shoulder. They're part of you, I whispered. So they're part of us. He closed his eyes and breathed out slowly. And for the first time, I felt him let go of a piece of his guilt. Not all of it, but enough to start healing. We sit on the porch many evenings now, watching the sunset, listening to the world settle. Sometimes we talk about little things: what to cook for dinner, which flowers to plant, how the neighbor's dog barks at nothing. Sometimes we talk about deep things: loss, love, forgiveness, hope. But most of the time, we just sit quietly, comfortable in a silence that no longer hides anything. A silence that feels like peace, not avoidance. A silence that feels shared. If there is one thing this whole experience taught me, it's this: every person carries a story you don't know. A story written in invisible ink. A story they might be too afraid to share. Sometimes people hide their pain not to deceive you, but because they don't know how to let you in. Sometimes love means knocking gently. Sometimes love means waiting quietly. And sometimes, love means opening a door, even one that has been locked for 12 long years. Kevin once told me he feared I would see him as broken. But the truth is, we are all a little broken. We are all a little fragile. And the most beautiful thing we can do is hold one another with gentle hands. Today, when I look at my husband, I don't see a man full of secrets. I see a man full of love, shaped by loss, finally willing to share both. And when I look at myself, I see a woman who learned that bravery isn't loud. Bravery is quiet. Bravery is soft. Bravery is choosing love over fear, every single time. If you ever find a locked door in someone's heart, do not rush. Do not break it. Do not shout. Just sit beside it. Wait, listen, love gently. Because one day, when they are ready, they might hand you the key. And what you find behind that door may change everything, not in a frightening way, but in a human way. A way that teaches you what love truly means.